Thank you, Brynja, distinguished ministers and guests. I'm so happy to see all of you here in Reykjavik this beautiful morning and welcome you to the first Wellbeing Economy Forum here in Reykjavik. So it's going to be an interesting 2 days ahead of us, and I think it's fair to say that we have brought together many of the world's best experts and practitioners to Reykjavik to discuss the challenges and opportunities within the field of the well-being economy, a matter I truly believe is of paramount importance and critical to our goal to achieve sustainable societies. Among us are Icelandic comedians, obviously, but also politicians and experts from the Wellbeing Economy Governments, the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, the World Health Organization, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and Action for Happiness, and many more. It's been 5 years now since Scotland, Iceland, and New Zealand in 2018 created the Wellbeing Economy Governments, or the WEGO group, as we call it, and since then Wales, Finland and Canada have joined and actively participated in the work. It's a collaboration of governments sharing expertise and policy practices to advance the ambition of building well-being economies and progress towards the UN sustainability goals. And I want to mention here in the beginning that the Scottish government has been a leading force within the WEGO project, and on behalf of the Icelandic government, I would like to thank them for their leadership and all the work and dedication they have put into this important project. But what are we talking about when we talk about a well-being economy? I think it describes it pretty accurately to say that we have built an economic model under which constant growth is essential and considered positive no matter how it's achieved and at what cost. The WEGO project differs from this thinking. It entails both an analysis of the drawbacks of our current economic model and a commitment to building an alternative future, focusing on the well-being and quality of life, not only of current but also of future generations. Sustainability is therefore at the heart of the well-being economy. The object is to raise people's quality of life, and that does not mean that we simply dispense with wealth, but rather that economic growth is good insofar as it can be harnessed to increase well-being without devastating ecological consequences. It is not a goal in itself. Our joint vision is to pursue human and ecological well-being beyond and above the traditional monetary measures such as GDP through indicators that can better assess the quality of life and happiness in our societies. And I know it's considered to be pretty tacky to talk about happiness when you're a politician, but can there be any more important goal for a politician than really to think about the happiness of their people? So I think it's really at the core of when we talk about well-being, how we can actually create societies where people can pursue happiness. And I think it's very important to mention here that we are now at the halfway point of the 2030 agenda, and we need to demonstrate unprecedented resolve in accelerating action on the SDGs. And the Sustainable Development Goals are a very important part of this notion of the well-being economy. Worldwide, and we are in the year 2023, only 12% of the reported SDGs are on track. The number of people living in extreme poverty, to mention one example, has increased since 2019, which is a very and deeply worrying trend. And the pandemic definitely did not help us, and the rise of conflicts in the world did not help us either. So we really need to step up our game if we are going to reach the SDGs before 2030. In Iceland, we are truly committed in doing our part. We rank relatively high on SDG implementation, but there is definitely room for improvement in many areas, not least in understanding and managing our adverse spillover effects. Recently, my government has strengthened our national framework for sustainable development with a new cooperation platform called Sustainable Iceland, and we have established a large sustainability council with members of the government and across society. By the end of this year, we aim to have developed a national strategy for sustainable development for 2030, where the SDGs will be guiding principles. At the same time, we have been implementing well-being indicators and well-being priorities. In 2019, my government introduced 39 indicators. They are now 40. We added one 2 years ago to track the progress of the well-being economy. And the indicators include economic, environmental, labor market, and social factors, and are compatible with well-being indicators published in other countries and international organizations like OECD. The preparation of these indicators, and I think this is an important point in the well-being economy, that it also matters how we do things. And the preparation of these indicators was pan-political. Part of it was actually making an opinion poll among the Icelandic people, asking the population what they valued most in their private life and in society. And maybe it did not come as a surprise, but health was on top of both lists, both in their private life, but also what politicians should focus on in society. After we finished the work on the indicators, we integrated 6 well-being priorities into the 5 years fiscal strategy. And I think it's important there that for a politician, it's very tempting to put priorities in the strategy which are already, where we are already doing well. So we can actually show results because we're already doing it very well, so therefore we prioritize this. But we decided not to do that. And the 6 priorities are mental health, where we have huge challenges here in Iceland. But this has also resulted in increased funding for mental health. We see, for example, we have doubled the number of psychologists working for the public health care. Just one example in how we are trying to prioritize this. But at the same time, we admit that we have a huge challenge. The other priorities are secure housing, and we have greatly increased our funding for social housing here in Iceland in collaboration with the labor movement. Because this is also a great challenge for us where we need to do a lot better. We have also introduced the priority on public life balance, where we have already introduced a longer parental leave and the shortening of the working week. Number 4 is zero carbon neutral future, where we have done several things, obviously. Number 5 is innovation growth, where we have increased R&D funding, and we have seen actually the export revenue from innovation grow substantially. And number 6 is better communication with the public, which is an ongoing project. I think the best case example is from the pandemic, because we have the director of health here in this room, where actually our experts made an amazing job in communicating to the public. And we saw great results, for example, when it came to misinformation and disinformation, which was very low here in Iceland. And we also saw a strong confidence in government action and high participation in vaccinations. Now, dear guests, I could talk forever. I just would like to conclude with 2 points. First, gender equality is central in everything we do in the well-being economy in Iceland. Iceland is actually considered and has been measured on the top when it comes to gender equality for several years in the world. But I think the reason for that is that we know deeply in our hearts that we haven't achieved gender equality, and even though we have made progress, we never stop. And our priorities now is actually the gender pay gap, which is still a fact in Iceland, but we aim to eradicate it, hopefully before 2030. And the other top priority is gender-based violence. And that is a deeply rooted thing in all our societies. And we need to really bring that up to the surface to be really able to fight it and eradicate it. And we have seen great progress made in that direction here in Iceland in the last few years. And the other thing I want to mention is obviously the greatest generational challenge we are faced with, which is the climate crisis. In the end, it is the story of a deeply flawed economic policy, where the more affluent countries have contributed most to the problem tend to be the least affected by it. And as we all know, human well-being is intrinsically linked to the planet's health. So when we see not only the climate change, but also environmental degradation and biodiversity loss, They also threaten our physical, mental, and social health and pose significant challenges to our efforts to promote well-being for all. The climate crisis has really forced us to rethink our way of life, our modes of consumption, production, and transportation, and how these might threaten the quality of life of future generations. Sometimes it is said that solutions to prevent climate change may come at a considerable economic cost. My answer to that is that it will cost a lot more to do nothing. And that cost does not have to translate into a decrease in well-being, because moving from a narrow focus on production and consumption volumes to a broader view of well-being may enable us to preserve the overall quality of people's lives through better use of resources, emphasizing human needs over economic growth. And finally, just one final point, which I think is going to be something that we need to think about in developing the well-being concept, is the entrance of artificial intelligence, which will have a drastic effect on our labor market, but also on political debates, on our consumer behavior, etc., on education, on culture, really on everything we do. And we need to take that into account in our policy making for well-being societies. And to conclude, it's an opportunity to be here today, and I'm very grateful for this attendance. It's an opportunity to participate, to share knowledge, to share insights on the interconnections between well-being and sustainability. And the aim of this forum is not least to find fruitful ways to work together towards finding innovative and practical solutions to the complex challenges of promoting well-being and sustainability. In the next couple of days, your input, expertise, and perspectives will be critical to progressing in our work. And finally, I want to thank my team, which works on sustainability and well-being. I also want to thank the Ministry of Health and the Directorate of Health in Iceland and the city of Reykjavik for coming together and organizing this forum. So thank you very much, and hope you have a great day ahead of you. Thank you.